Good day, comrades and friends. This is Dr. Gabe Roberts, the quantum chiropractor, the subconscious healer, new thought minister, and your expert in energy medicine. Someone once mentioned that keeping an open mind is simply being able to get rid of or release some of your longest standing and perhaps most cherished beliefs if a new, better idea is presented. So I would like to ask, what if something we've always assumed that was common sense and generally passed down generationally and never even questioned? What if this was really something more harmful than we actually ever imagined? I'm talking about one case of childhood trauma. Now, before we dive deeper into this, we must understand the most significantly important template for the child in their earliest years and emotional growth of a child, as well as for their proper brain physiological development, is a nurturing relationship and a mutual response from the parents. This is a crucial key which determines how that template is actually imprinted on the child's brain for physiological development and healthy psychological development. In other words, if there are any behaviors at all which erode or wear on the relationship of the child, this will actually undermine the child's beliefs. This will make the child feel insecure, make them feel defensive with guarded feelings, and their fight or flight is active. And this actually ceases any kind of constructive learning from taking place. Now, this kind of behavior is actually encouraged from doctors, psychologists, and so-called parental experts on a regular basis. If a child is angry or throws a temper tantrum, these experts supposedly say, okay, timeout. Put your kid in timeout. Now, as innocent as this might seem, because this is what we always did. These are actually some of the most dangerous words, in my opinion. Whenever someone says, well, it's just the way we've always did things, I always kind of think those are dangerous words to actually live by. But this action actually teaches a child that the connection between a parent and a child, that very, very inherent, very important connection between a parent and child, can actually be withdrawn. And using this action as a threat will sometimes make the child more obedient. But with that obedience, what has the child actually learned from their perspective? What have they actually learned from this withdrawal that happens in a timeout? Well, the child has learned the relationship is now conditional, that they're only acceptable to the parents if they please the parent. Additionally, this imprints the child that the relationship with the parents is unstable and unreliable, and that the parent is not actually available for them when they're the most upset, because that's why they're acting out. Now, it's easy to ask, well, why is he acting out? Why is he throwing a temper tantrum? Well, because they're frustrated about something and they don't have the verbiage to explain it. They're angry about something because they're unhappy about something. And during this time, when they're trying to express their emotions, and you put them in timeout because some book or some expert or some doctor or some psychologist told you to, you're actually sending them a message. When you're most unhappy, that's when I'm least available to you. And this is how parents are instructed to actually do things from doctors, and not even pick their kids up if they're crying. Let them sleep it out. If they're crying in the night, don't feed them because you could break that feeding cycle. So what lessons does a child learn from this over and over again? That their emotions do not matter. Now, if you look at nature and you tell a mother bear not to respond to her cub whimpering in agony, and watch what happens. Children have a definite need to attach, because without it, they don't survive. It's that simple. In hunter-gatherer bands and ancient tribes around the world long ago, where human beings actually evolved, these attachments were with adults, and not just one or two adults, but a whole set of nurturing adults. They knew how crucial the child through these years were. I mean, they wouldn't even let an adult feeling rage anywhere near a pregnant woman. That's how well they understood emotions and how effective emotions actually impacted a pregnant woman or an unborn child. In our culture, it's considered normal everyday life to deprive children of the parental presence for the most part. A child's developing brain cannot handle that attachment void where there's no attachment figure. And when the parent or nurturing adult is not present, that child will fill that void with someone less than ideal, a peer group. And this peer group will actually lead the child to become far more attached to the peers than is actually healthy for them. Now the peers take on that role as being their model to fill that gap. This guides them, this forms their template on how they behave. And then if a parent sees this and becomes more authoritarian, it actually drives a further wedge away. It actually drives the children away because that competition is too much to bear. This becomes ingrained into the neurology and sets up certain patterns of thinking and behaving all the way into adulthood. Just one example of this, when I asked a large group of people once if they felt comfortable answering this question, of course, who amongst you has suffered some kind of sexual abuse as a child? And there were a significant amount of people who raised their hands and indicated that it had happened to them in the past. And then when I asked, how many people did you tell? Whom of you did you go tell your parents? And actually, none of them replied that they did at the time. None of them felt safe going and telling their parents when something like this actually occurred. Something early on in their childhood had taught them that they couldn't express even the most painful of experiences because to them, their emotions didn't matter. Kids who have suffered from this should be able to scream and yell and express their frustrations, having been handled incorrectly and be abused and subjected to that kind of emotional pain. They should be able to completely express themselves. But unfortunately, a majority of them actually suppress this deep down. And this is from early child experience. And again, this leads to pathology later in life. Now, understand the real relationship between a child and parent does not depend on words. Okay. Children, before they can speak, it really depends on the capacity to be with a child, to sit there and be with the child. Even if you don't even know what to do, just being in the presence of a child and having the energy exchange with a child that implies to them that you welcome them in your presence and you welcome them to exist in your presence, and that the parent is overjoyed and feels wonderful to have this child in their presence. That's what a child actually needs. It's not just body language, it's not just smiles and giggles, it's the energy, and children can actually pick up right on that. And this in early, again, 0 to 6, okay? Really 0 to 3, but 0 to 6, sometimes 7 to 11, but most of the times that's what really shapes a child's personality is this early years. So go to my page, Dr. Gabe Roberts, like it and tag a friend as I continue to go in depth on mind, how the mind works, how the mind develops, and show you that the greatest part of you is actually something you'll never see.